Okay, let's see. They're ending up going to visit the king. Chapter 14, Jailbirds. As the satire soldiers ushered Ben and Pearl through the hedge maze, Ben considered the situation. The good news was that they were headed to the Griffin's palace. They didn't need Mr. Tabby to lead the way, after all. The bad news? Well, the bad news was Mr. Tabby was still missing. Before leaving the portal, Mr. Tabby had told Ben and Pearl never to let him off the leash. This is Pearl's fault, Ben thought with a sour expression. Pearl was always getting them into trouble. She had let the leprechaun out of the hospital. She had dumped dragon droppings off the roof. And now she had dropped the leash and lost Mr. Tabby. Here, kitty, 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 Pearl called, her hands cupped around her mouth. You'd better not say that in front of the king, Vic warned with a grunt. Ben had to think about it for a moment. It made sense. A lion, even half a lion, wouldn't want to be called a kitty. Did you hear that? He whispered to Pearl. Don't say, here, kitty, 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 in front of the king, or you'll get us in even more trouble. Yeah, okay, Pearl said. You don't have to be so snippy about it. They turned left, and then right, and then left again, passing another wanted sign. How much longer before we can talk to the king? Ben asked the soldiers. We've got to find Mr. Tabby and get back by 3 o'clock. That's when we're expected home. And that's when they started to help cure everyone of tonsillitis. Hopefully. Talk to the king? Vlad snorted. Hey, you hear that, Vic? They want to talk to the king. What's the matter with you two? Vic asked. Don't you know it's a bad mood day? He pointed to the dark sky. Storm clouds continued to brew. What's a bad mood day? Ben asked. If the king's in a good mood, it's sunny and warm at the palace. If he's in a bad mood, it rains. And if he's in a really bad mood, well, it's just miserable. Thunder and lightning seared a nearby hedge. Whoa, Ben said, nearly jumping out of his dress shoes. That was close. Why is the king in a bad mood? Pearl asked as the smoke cleared. The riddles have run out, Vlad said. Pearl laughed. But that doesn't make any sense. You can run out of milk and bread, but how can you run out of riddles? The king heard them all, Vic told her, and no one's been able to find any new ones. Well, I bet Ben can help. He is super good at making up things. Pearl smiled at Ben. Ben didn't smile back. Mr. Tabby had said that the best way to make a Griffin happy was to engage in a battle of riddles. Ben hoped this wouldn't come to pass. For one thing, it is to make up a story for Pearl or Grandpa or Abe. But for the king of the entire imaginary world, talk about serious pressure. We are here, Vlad announced. They had reached the end of the maze. A massive golden gate stood before them, gleaming despite the lack of sunlight. And a pair of golden lion paws held the gate closed, while a pair of golden wings rose above it. The tall hedges flanked the gate, and a flag waved atop a pole. The gray flag bore the image of a griffin. That's the bad mood flag, said Vlad. Maybe you should get one, Pearl whispered to Ben. Then I would know when you're going to be so cranky. Cranky? Ben exclaimed. I'm only cranky because you dropped the leash. He would never have dropped the leash. Well, at least that's what he told himself. Anyway, it doesn't matter what kind of mood I'm in, Ben pointed out. You should be worried about the king. If he's in a bad mood, he might not give us a feather. And don't forget, the danger rating scale depends on his mood. The storm clouds rumbled. Vlad reached up and unhooked one of the golden paws, and the gate swung open. Ben steadied himself, preparing to be awed. Surely the king of the entire imaginary world would live in a palace more magnificent than anything he had read about in any storybooks, or anything that he could ever create in his own stories. But what he saw was a tree. Sure, it was a pretty big tree, with a trunk as broad as a house, The branches reached so wide they blocked out the angry gray sky. A narrow wooden staircase wound up the tree, disappearing into the dense foliage. Pearl looked around and said the exact same thing that Ben was thinking. So where's the palace? You're looking at it. Vlad pointed to the base of the tree, which had been hollowed out like a cave. It's a den, Ben realized. Wait a minute. This made total sense. He had been expecting a traditional castle with turrets and a moat and a drawbridge. But the king was half lion, and lions lived in dens. Ben and Pearl followed Vlad across the lush grass carpet. A group of satire soldiers were sitting together eating brown bag lunches. They waved at Vic and Vlad. I'm so excited, Pearl said as she grabbed Ben's arm. I don't care if I had to wear a skirt, and I don't care if we've been arrested. We get to meet another king. And as she smiled, her steps became extra bouncy. Ben returned the smile, though his was more clenched. Pearl never seemed to focus on the bad or the dangerous stuff. Ben wished he could be more like her. On the other hand, though, being cautious could help them stay safe. If the Griffin King's bad mood elevated him to a +5 on the danger scale, Pearl and Ben would be in for a heap of trouble. So while Pearl bounced around, giddy with anticipation, Ben was determined to stay focused and stay alert. We're going inside, Pearl said with a squeal as Vlad led them next to the hollowed-out tree. A throne, with lion's feet at the base and wings sprouting from the top, had been carved from the tree itself. Ben's gaze darted immediately to a pile of discarded bones that lay close to the base of the throne. Clearly, the Griffin King was a carnivore. Fortunately, none of the bones belonged to anything larger than a rat. So where's the king? Pearl asked. He's holding a meeting in his nest. Vlad pointed upward. A nest and a den, Ben said. That makes sense. Vic prodded Ben's shoulder with his spear, pushing him toward a wooden pen that looked sort of like a cage. Since you're both under arrest, you'll await your trial in there. Trial? Oh no. Maybe they needed to call a lawyer after all. I'd like to make my one phone call, Ben said. I want to call Dr. Wu and let her know what's going on. While he had never seen a phone in the imaginary world, he knew that it was somehow possible to call the switchboard and report an emergency. The Unicorn King had called when the foal had gone missing. No calls without authorization from the king, Vlad pointed to the cage. Inside, both of you. No way am I getting in there, Pearl said, folding her arms tightly. Besides, you don't need to put us on trial because we are not the poachers. How many times do we have to tell you that? Can't we just talk to the king? Ben asked. We'll make it real quick, and then he can get back to his meeting. But a headbutt from Vic landed Ben in the cage. Vic was about to butt Pearl too, but she waved her hands. Okay. No need to get pushy. She stepped inside the cage voluntarily. Vlad closed and locked the cage door. Let's get some lunch, Vlad said. Yeah, I'm practically starving. And don't forget to tell the king we're here, Pearl called as Vic and Vlad left the den. Ben rattled the door. It held tight. We're in jail, Pearl. Jail. It's not jail, Ben. It's just a big bird cage. Besides, even if there is a trial, we're innocent. This is a simple misunderstanding. She hiked her skirt and adjusted her basketball shorts. Anyway, what should we be worried about is getting this griffin's feather, so my parents will stop looking like Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head. I wonder how long we're going to have to wait, Ben said. He started thinking of ways to break out just in case. They could dig a tunnel, or maybe Pearl was skinny enough to squeeze through the bars. Look, Pearl exclaimed. The reddish-orange cat pranced into the den. his nose held high as if he owned the place. A vial of yellow fairy dust sparkled at his neck. The leash, which was still attached to his harness, dragged behind him. The cat wasn't lost after all. He had been following them this whole time. What a relief! "Hi, Mr. Tabby," Ben called. But the cat ignored him. He stood on his hind legs and proceeded to sharpen his claws on the side of the throne. "Doesn't that kind of seem like a rude thing to do?" Ben asked Pearl. After all, it was the king's throne, not a scratching post. "Yeah, it does seem a bit odd. Very rude." Ben was worried that Mr. Tabby's behavior would put the king in an even worse mood. He snapped his fingers. "Hey, Mr. Tabby, stop doing that!" Pearl patted her knee. "Here, kitty, 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 kitty." Still ignoring them, the cat leaped onto the throne and then sharpened its claws on one of the carved wings. "Oh, that's a bad kitty, Ben scolded. The cat flicked its tail, its claws digging into the wood. Then he raised his tail even higher and aimed his rear end at the corner of the throne. "Oh no!" Ben cried. "He's gonna spray! We've got to stop him!" "Here, kitty, 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 kitty! Here, kitty, 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 kitty!" Pearl yelled, her voice echoing through the den. From far above came the sound of creaking branches. Luckily, the cat didn't spray. He lowered his tail and looked up at the ceiling. More branches creaked. The entire tree shuddered. And without a glance at the apprentices, the cat leapt off the throne and dashed away. Before Pearl could ask any questions, and before Ben could do any worrying, a sharp wind blew across their faces, and then a huge bird flew into the den and landed on the dirt floor. When it opened its hooked beak, but it didn't tweet, or chirp, or caw. It roared.